Plenty of quota is still available for polling stations near the mainland border for district elections. Chinese astronauts conclude their visit to Hong Kong. And conflict resumes in Gaza once the truce ended today. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The District Council election is set to take place on the 10th of this month, when 4 near-border polling stations will be set up at 2 Sheung Shui schools, allowing Hong Kong residents in the mainland to cast their votes more conveniently. Registrations for the stations will end next Tuesday. Local residents can also register for the stations, with both of them still have ample quotas. Timothy Lee has our top story.
This year's district council elections will take place in less than 10 days, with over 600 polling stations becoming available across the city's 18 districts. To provide a convenient voting experience for Hong Kongers living in the mainland, 4 near-boundary polling stations will be available in Sheung Shui. The registration quota for the stations is 38,000. Registrations are set to end next Tuesday. The government earlier revealed only around 4,500 residents registered for the stations as of Sunday, making up just over 10% of the registration quota. Registrants are only required to provide their name, identity card information, and telephone number, and are not required to prove their residency in the mainland, meaning local residents could also use the stations. Authorities arranged shuttle buses to carry voters from both the mainland and the SAR to the polling stations in Sheung Shui on Election Day. Some residents shared their views on the border voting measure. This resident said it's convenient for her to cast her vote before heading up north. While this woman says she believes voting is a responsibility for Hong Kong residents. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Guangdong set up installations at a mall near Guangzhou East Station to promote the district election. Lawmaker and Hong Kong Federation of Trade Unions Chairman Kingsley Wong said the purpose of the border polling stations are to provide a convenient voting experience for residents. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Many senior government officials have made promotional videos to encourage more residents to vote in the district council elections. They include senior officials from the Security Bureau and the police force, including Secretary for Security Chris Tang, Police Commissioner Raymond Siu, as well as Deputy Police Commissioner Zhou Chao. The promotional videos can be found across the internet, television, and outdoors. Many residents said there is enough promotion for the election, but some of them noted they remain unfamiliar with the revised electoral system. Members of the Chinese space program delegation wrapped up their 4-day visit to Hong Kong. On a bus and ferry tour, the group of astronauts visited various tourist spots and landmarks, including Tsim Sha Tsui and the West Kowloon Cultural District. At around 10 a.m., the delegation of Chinese astronauts set off from their hotel at the Hong Kong Exhibition and Convention Center. They first visited the Wan Chai Seaside Promenade. Then they boarded a star ferry vessel called World Star, escorted by Marine Police. As the vessel sailed along the northern coast of Hong Kong Island, the delegation members took in the skyline of Victoria Harbour with some photo op time. The boat trip took around 20 minutes. When asked about what they think about Hong Kong, the astronauts said it's beautiful. The delegation then boarded an open-top double-decker to tour around Tsim Sha Tsui. The bus passed by Nathan Road. The delegation then dropped by the Hong Kong Museum of Art. This Shenzhen tourist said he's excited to see Wang Yaoping, the first Chinese woman to walk in space, saying that she looks friendly and beautiful. The group then reached the Hong Kong Palace Museum in the West Kowloon Cultural District. They were welcomed by Betty Fong, Chief Executive Officer of the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. At around 3 p.m., they had their last engagement, a farewell ceremony held at Government House. Thanking the delegation for their visit, Chief Executive John Lee applauded the astronauts' capability, team spirit, and charisma, saying that these are qualities young people should learn from. He also hopes the dream to have a homegrown astronaut from Hong Kong could be realized. China Manned Space Agency Deputy Director General Lin Shiqiang, also the delegation's leader, said they hope the seeds of national pride, passion for innovation and technology, and the drive to chase after one's dream could be planted in the hearts of young people in Hong Kong. At 4 p.m., the space program delegation headed to Macau via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry Sun Zhong said another candidate from Hong Kong has been shortlisted for the National Manned Space Program recruitment of payload specialists. The city now has more than one candidate. Sun said results for the final selection stage will be announced later. He said he believes residents hope to see the SAR candidate fulfill their dream to enter into space and contribute to the nation. He added the government will strengthen efforts to develop aerospace technology-related education and activities. Earlier this week, a patient at the Caritas Medical Center died after his oxygen cylinder was not opened for 5 minutes during a transfer between wards. Mixed views remain over whether the 3 medical workers involved should be suspended from duty. The doctor and the 2 nurses involved all have more than a decade of experience, but none of them realized the oxygen cylinder was not opened at the time. Lawmaker Edward Leung said the 3 workers should not report to duty for now to help with investigations. The legislator added the incident could affect their emotional state and thus their daily work too. Alex Lam, chairman of Hong Kong Patients' Voices, said it's not necessary to force the 3 workers to take leave, as that could give an impression to colleagues that the trio are responsible for the blunder, which is unfair to them. To prevent similar mishaps from happening in future, Raymond Lee Wai-chun, director of critical care medicine at Hong Kong Sanatorium and Hospital, suggests the ward transfer duties be taken up by medical workers with emergency ward experience instead of those from regular wards. Overseas, the war in Gaza has restarted. Israel say Hamas broke the terms of the truce and they have resumed strikes. At least 32 Palestinians have died today, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. It follows a shooting on Thursday in Jerusalem by Hamas gunmen. David Garrett reports.
Smoke seen and explosions heard in Gaza again. Israel says it is carrying out strikes and has resumed combat operations on Hamas targets. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims Hamas broke the terms of the truce. His office said the militant group had not released all women and children as agreed, and rockets have been fired at Israel. Chaos on the streets of Khan Yunis further south. Witnesses reported heavy shelling and smoke to the east of the town as Israel steps up assaults first thing Friday. Israel sent out a map showing residents which areas are safe. Ambulances rushed to hospitals carrying the wounded, but some did not make it. Dozens were killed across Gaza. People cried in the streets as they faced the consequence of the attacks. The humanitarian pause had lasted 7 days but was already under threat after a deadly shooting in Jerusalem a day earlier. CCTV caught the moments in the lead up to the attack. Gunmen are seen exiting a vehicle and preparing to fire. Civilians run away in fear. Hamas claimed credit as the 2 shooters from East Jerusalem killed 3 people at a bus stop. The gunmen were shot dead by off-duty soldiers. The assailants were said to be in their 30s and both had served time in Israeli prisons. Technically, this may not be a breach of the truce, but the White House were quick to condemn the attack.
This attack happened in Jerusalem. The pauses in the fighting were specific to Gaza.
Okay, so that's as simple as that. I mean, it wasn't, therefore it didn't violate.
It didn't technically violate the deal that was in place, but obviously it's a stark reminder of who they're facing and what kind of enemy that they're opposing.
Hundreds crowded in the street at the funeral for one of those killed. He was a 73-year-old named Elimelech Wasserman. He was a rabbi, a Jewish religious leader and well known in the community. Hundreds gathered and followed his coffin as he was laid to rest.
I am a nephew from the man that is be killed by Hamas. And I have not the words what to take.
It was my wedding, and I loved him very much. He was my best friend. I never called him Reb, only Melach, because he was my friend.
Montana's first in the U.S. law banning the video sharing app TikTok in the state was blocked from taking effect on January 4th by a federal judge who called the measure unconstitutional. A final ruling will come at a later date after the legal challenge moves through the courts. U.S. District Judge Donald Moley said the ban oversteps state power and infringes on the constitutional right of users and businesses, while singling out the state for its fixation on purported Chinese influence. In May, Montana lawmakers made the state the first in the U.S. to pass a complete ban on the app. That's based on the argument that the Chinese government could gain access to user information from TikTok. TikTok's parent company ByteDance is based in China. The ban would prohibit downloads of TikTok in the state. TikTok said the company was pleased that the judge rejected this unconstitutional law. Still ahead, COP28 opens with major agreement announced. Joe Biden pays tribute to the late Henry Kissinger. And a look at how a partnership with China helped develop hydroelectric power in Laos. Welcome back. COP28, or the 28th United Nations Climate Conference, is now taking place in Dubai. And an early achievement has been announced. A new fund to help compensate countries suffering from climate change was established. Danny Rao tells us more.
Nearly all nations attending the COP28 in Dubai contributed to the creation of a new fund to help compensate countries struggling to cope with loss and damage caused by climate change, seen as a major first-day breakthrough at this year's UN Climate Conference. Some countries started putting in money right away, including Germany, who contributed $100 million. Developing nations have long sought to address the problem of inadequate funding for responding to climate disasters caused by climate change, which hit them especially hard, and for which they have little responsibility. Historically, industrialized countries have spewed out the most carbon emissions that are trapping heat in the atmosphere. The initial steps toward creating the fund were taken as a major accomplishment at last year's UN Climate Conference in Egypt, but it was never finalized. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber, president of COP28, heralded the agreement.
To get the agenda voted and agreed on without any delay. For those who have been involved in previous COPs, this is just unprecedented.
World leaders started arriving in Dubai on Friday for the COP28 Climate Summit. 130 world leaders are set to address the United Nations Climate Conference. President Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden will not be in attendance. First Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang and US Vice President Kamala Harris will be at the summit instead. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres kicked off today's proceedings. Fresh from visiting melting glaciers in Antarctica and Nepal, he said Earth's vital signs are failing and insisted you can prevent planetary crash and burn. He called on fossil fuel companies to abandon what he called their outdated business model and transition to utilizing greener energy sources.
Do not double down on an obsolete business model. Lead the transition to renewables using the resources you have available. Make no mistake, the road to climate sustainability is also the only viable pathway to economic sustainability of your companies in the future. And I urge governments to help industry make the right choice by regulating, legislating, putting a fair price on carbon.
Dan Orell, TVB News.
Chinese Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang said Beijing appreciates the efforts made by the United Arab Emirates in preparing for the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Dubai. Ding, who is in Dubai for the World Climate Action Summit, made the remarks when meeting with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Commending the development of bilateral relations, Ding called on the two sides to strengthen cooperation. Ding also talked about China's position on the Israel-Hamas conflict. He called for an immediate ceasefire. U.S. President Joe Biden described former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who died this week at the age of 100, as synonymous with effective diplomacy and one of the best strategic minds in the United States. More from NBC News.
He was consequential and controversial, the only person to serve as both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor at the same time.
I think we made further progress.
Tonight, tributes from Washington to Israel, Moscow to Beijing. President Biden saying they often disagreed and often strongly, but his fierce intellect and profound strategic focus was evident. And this from the current Secretary of State.
I was very privileged to get his counsel many times, including as recently as about a month ago.
The praise not only from America and her allies, Vladimir Putin calling Kissinger a wise and far-sighted statesman in a message to Kissinger's wife, Nancy. A message of condolence from Xi Jinping calling Kissinger's normalization of relations with China a brilliant strategic vision benefiting both countries as well as changing the world. Revered in Beijing for that 1972 breakthrough, meeting Chairman Mao, learning how to use chopsticks from Zhou Enlai, easing tensions with the Soviet Union. But it was a legacy stained by Vietnam. His critics called him a war criminal for expanding the war to Cambodia and Laos, declaring success just before the 1972 election, years before it was over.
We believe that peace is at hand.
2 members of the Nobel Committee resigned when he received the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years later. Jewish and born in Germany, the young Kissinger came to America with his family as a teenager, fleeing the Nazis, to return with the U.S. Army in World War II. Later in the White House, his influence and charm making him an unlikely celebrity, nicknamed Super K on a Newsweek cover. After leaving office, he became even more influential.
How would you rate the crisis management by this administration?
Oh, I would say that after the first few days of confusion, the administration has handled it properly and calmly.
Counseling presidents from both parties for decades and visiting foreign leaders, even traveling to China at the age of 100 for a red carpet meeting with President Xi, setting the stage for President Biden's recent summit.
Laos, a Southeast Asian country with an abundance of surface water and broad rivers, has much potential for developing hydroelectric power. But building the infrastructure is not easy. Some Chinese companies have supported construction projects of hydropower plants in Laos. Let's take a look. Laos is a water-rich country, but its development has been hamstrung by poor infrastructure. Trying to make a change, the country undertook hydropower projects in collaboration with Chinese companies. They include these 7-river cascade hydropower dams on the Nam O River in northern Laos, which stretches over 400 kilometers in length. With a total investment of more than 20 billion yuan, the plants began full operations in 2021, generating 5 billion kilowatt-hours annually. They account for 40% of Laos' electricity generation. Tian Xiaoqiang, Deputy General Manager of the China Power Company helming the project, said the aim is to improve the quality of life among Laotians and reduce cases of power outage. Some 500 workers run the hydropower plants. Half of them are locals, including 22-year-old Mulan. Mulan says she felt very happy to be able to have a stable job and income. Chinese technicians have been training local staff to facilitate transition of dam operation to Laotians when the plant's 30-year franchise ends. 5 years ago, a dam collapse led to more than 20 people being killed and over 1,000 affected. The current hydropower plants are said to be able to withstand powerful floods. The China Power Company also helped resettle some 120,000 downstream residents and rebuild affected villages. One of the beneficiaries is Hui Lo Village. The village has said they have a much better living environment with more stable power supply, and they could even use electrical appliances to cook. With the goal of becoming the battery of Southeast Asia, Laos is building some 100 hydropower plants nationwide. That's not just for local power supply, but also for sale to neighboring countries, including Thailand and Vietnam, to boost the country's income. But concerns of overproduction remain. Researcher on Southeast Asian studies Derek Chen said, apart from ecological impacts, the Laotian government should also plan carefully before building dams. Back locally, sources say the suspected poisoning of a guide dog in a mall last month is listed as a case of request for police assistance after the incident was reported by the Hong Kong Seeing Eye Dog Services. Some lawmakers said they believe the government is not concerned enough about the safety of guide dogs. The incident occurred on the 13th of November. guide dog Funny became sick and then died in a mall. The Hong Kong Seeing Eye Dog Services said lab reports indicate Funny may have died because of poisoning caused by roadside pesticides. Lawmaker Gary Chan said there is a lack of strict laws to protect animals in the city, adding authorities should set up a cross-departmental task force to implement measures ensuring the safety of guide dogs. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.